Hello, welcome to this learning episode on strategic process to diversity and inclusion initiatives. The strategic process to D&I has 7 steps. Let us see them one by one. Step number 1, executive commitment. Executive level leadership should act as role models and advocates for diversity and inclusion initiatives and should not merely do lip service. The Forbes survey highlights that diversity and inclusion initiatives are the responsibility of the executives. 35% of the CEOs are accountable for the D&I initiatives. Leaders from all levels should be involved in the D&I process. And undoubtedly, HR should spearhead the D&I process. The core business strategy of any organization is re-examined and re-evaluated generally once in 5 years. And diversity and inclusion should also evolve and reposition itself to the core business strategy. As the C-suite moves on after a certain period, the D&I should remain central to the organization's core business strategy. Now, let us discuss about step number 2, preliminary assessment. Here, the whole assessment should be data-driven. Assessment is of two-fold. First is assessing the current state of diversity and inclusion measures in the organization. Second one is benchmarking against the set objectives, goals, targets. While collecting data about the demographics, the organization should not only focus on the demographics, but also on the inclusion part. It means it should not only be concerned about the demographics of the organization, whether the people are treated fairly and included, whether their views are heard. This itself is this method of data collection itself is a consciousness raising D&I effort. While collecting D&I data, the organization has to consider the legal implication and it should not pose itself for undue legal risks. As the diversity data collected should be kept confidential and handled properly. Step number 3, infrastructure creation. With respect to the infrastructure creation, there are 2 parts to it. That is, there are 2 task forces which we will discuss. One is the diversity council and second one is the employee resource group. Under the diversity council, the role of the diversity council is to set objectives, guide, assess and champion the whole D&I process. Many largely dispersed organizations, diversity councils are made up of members from the regional or local level and the headquarters level. In certain organizations, membership are made up of the senior management. It purely depends upon the organization policies. Certain criteria have been laid down for diversity councils by 2 famous organizations. One is Diversity Inc. and the other one is Catalyst. The Catalyst Inc. has been presenting diversity and inclusion initiative awards since 1987 to organizations which excel in diversity and inclusion processes. It's a prestigious award which many organizations try to receive it. Moving on to the second task force, that is employee resource groups. Employee resource group is an affinity group or a network group who represent a particular diversity dimension, either for a positive reason or for a negative reason. The positive reason is they may want to be part of the organization's growth story, thereby aiding their career development. Negative reason is that particular dimension is least understood by the organization, and therefore they want to represent it. Employee resource groups also provide inputs, recommend actions, and review projects to the diversity councils. Now moving on to the step number 4. Step number 4 is process alignment or system changes to diversity and inclusion. All the organization's policies, practices, procedures, etc. should be realigned itself with the diversity and inclusion strategy, which means policies pertaining to recruitment, succession planning, corporate social responsibility, vendor and supply chain management, etc. should realign itself with the diversity and inclusion strategy. Moving on to step number 5, training on diversity and inclusion initiatives. Sure, the role of the training is to not take the responsibility for the failure of the D&I initiatives, rather than to create awareness, enhancing knowledge, skills, and abilities of all employees on diversity, thereby aiding in behavioral change, which further results in cultural change. A multinational IT company has 3 levels of training to its D&I initiatives. The first level is basic diversity awareness training to all employees to accommodate and adjust and adapt to a large and dispersed work environment. The second training is diversity management courses. These are meant for managers who manage a large and dynamic workforce. These trainings are provided to equip the managers to manage the diverse workforce. Third one is professional diversity programs, which are targeted at women employees, LGBT, and other groups to enhance their skills. Moving on to step number 6, measurement and evaluation. Like any other process, diversity and inclusion should be continuously evaluated and periodically measured. So there are 2 measures. One is the process measure, second one is the results measures. Process measure dwells on what went well, what went wrong, how the employees felt about the mentoring experience, and what was their feedback. The results measures dwells upon whether the activity resulted in accomplishing the goal, have we saved some costs. Step number 7, the final step, evolution and integration. The whole diversity and inclusion initiative should be standardized throughout the organization. This doesn't mean that the D&I initiatives do not require reevaluation and re-examination. It means a separate training program is not required for D&I, rather it should be part of the supervisory program. A separate recruitment program targeting the minority groups is not required, rather it should be a part of the overall recruitment process. That is globally managing the diversity initiatives at a local level. One should also go off the notion that particular diversity initiative will not fit into all national cultures. As the organization expands its global footprint, new areas of diversity and inclusion emerges, and it moves to a different level of D&I maturity, moving from conflict resolution to managing diverse teams and leveraging those teams for higher performance. With this, it's a wrap on this particular learning episode on strategic process to D&I. Thanks for patient listening. And this is Chidambaram signing off. Thank you.